On the 6th of March 1945, the German 6th SS Panzer Army rolled into Hungary with several hundred tanks at the front of Operation Frühlingserwachen. It was Germany's last major offensive of the war. 10 days later, that army had been ground out of existence in the Hungarian mud, and one of the Wehrmacht's last mobile formations was finished. The weapon that did most of the grinding had been in mass production for barely 6 months. By late 1943, Soviet tank crews were losing a fight they could not solve with skill alone. The standard 76.2mm guns in their T-34 medium tanks and Su-76 assault guns could punch through 60 to 70mm of rolled, homogeneous armor at 500 meters. That was enough to kill a Panzer III Ausf-J at useful range. It was not enough for what came next. The Panther arrived with an 80mm glacis plate sloped at 55 degrees, giving line-of-sight thickness around 140mm. The Tiger II carried 150mm on the hull and 180 on the turret. Even the upgraded 85mm D5S gun in the Su-85, which could manage roughly 100mm of penetration up close, ran out of answers at the ranges where German crews actually preferred to fight. Reports out of the Baltic and Hungarian fronts in late 1944 show the same scene repeating, and the German crews knew exactly what they were doing. Panthers and Tiger IIs sat hull down in tree lines and reverse slopes, picking off T-34-85s and Su-85s at extended range, long before Soviet guns could threaten them frontally. Soviet anti-tank units had to maneuver for close flanking shots, or hope for a lucky hit on side armor. The bill for that, in burning tanks, kept climbing. But here is the detail that everyone missed at the time. The Soviets had already started building the answer. The State Defense Committee committed to a 100mm self-propelled anti-tank gun built on the T-34 chassis. The order landed at Overmatched Soviet in Sverdlovsk during 1944. Chief designer Lev Israelevich Gorlitsky and his self-propelled artillery bureau got the job, with prototypes demanded before the year was out. Gorlitsky's team had one shot to make this work, because the front did not have time for a clean sheet design. Their answer was the Su-100. The 100mm D10S gun fired the BR-412 armor-piercing projectile at around 895 meters per second, and the jump in penetration finally gave Soviet crews a frontal answer to Panther armor and serious bite against Tiger I at most realistic engagement ranges. The gun lived in a fixed casemate instead of a rotating turret, which saved weight and complexity while still giving the crew solid frontal protection. The complete vehicle came in at 31.6 tons, combat-loaded, with a crew of 4, a commander, gunner, loader, and driver. Overall length was 9.45 meters with the gun forward. It rode on the proven T-34-85 chassis and was pulled along by the V234 diesel, putting out 500 horsepower. Ammunition stowage came to 33 rounds for the main gun, enough for a serious fight if the crew kept their fire discipline. Up to this point, Overmatched had been pouring everything into T-34-85 output. That was about to flip. Serial production at Overmatched Soviet began in September 1944, and monthly output climbed quickly through the autumn. Wartime production reached roughly 1,800 vehicles by the end of the war in Europe, several hundred in 1944, and over 1,000 the following year. The reason it scaled so fast came down to commonality: hull architecture, engine family, transmission, suspension, road wheels, tracks. Almost every fitting came straight off the T-34-85 line. Only the casemate superstructure needed new tooling. Because the rest of the vehicle was already in production, Overmatched slotted Su-100 output into the same workflow without strangling tank production. By the 6th of March 1945, Su-100s were in the field in regiment-level formations, scattered through self-propelled artillery and tank destroyer units. Doctrine pushed them into prepared positions on Hungarian terrain, dug into reverse slopes, tree lines, behind canal embankments. Soviet planners read the ground carefully. Roads, mud, mines, and prepared defences were going to funnel German heavy tanks into corridors where the new guns could reach them first. The principle was simple: hold fire until the column entered decisive range. Use the D-10S gun's penetration to land first-shot kills on Panthers and Tigers at ranges where their return fire would be sloppy. Tie every Su-100 position into a layered defence with infantry anti-tank teams, artillery observers, and adjacent destroyer positions for mutual support. The clock was already ticking on the 6th SS Panzer Army. They just could not hear it yet. During the opening days of March 1945, Soviet anti-tank defences, including Su-100s, engaged German heavy armour from concealed positions along defensive lines south of Lake Balaton. German crews ran into effective Soviet fire from multiple weapon systems, which forced tactical adaptations that slowed the offensive's pace and burned through fuel reserves they could not replace. Soviet commanders credited Su-100 units with successful long-range engagements during that fighting. Operation Frühlingserwachen collapsed within 10 days. The 6th SS Panzer Army's offensive capability fell apart under concentrated Soviet defences, mines, artillery, logistics failures, and worsening weather. Su-100 units were still holding defensive perimeters by the 10th of March after combat losses and redeployment to other sectors. German countermeasures, cautious movement, extended reconnaissance screens, smoke, and infantry probes to flush out hidden guns cost them time and fuel that formations already short on both could not absorb. The spring thaw made it worse for the Germans. Heavy armour was forced onto a small number of hardened roads, and those roads were exactly where the ambush positions sat. A single disabled tank at the front of a column locked up everything behind it. Attempts to bypass through marshy ground ended in vehicles that nobody was going to recover. The defender held every advantage. One lead tank knocked out, one entire company stopped moving. Think about that for a second. German logistics records show extended reconnaissance eating into already strained fuel allocations. Cautious movement protocols doubled transit times across the Hungarian plain. Smoke operations needed specialized equipment, and trained crews pulled from other jobs. Infantry screening slowed armored advances and raised casualties in rifle companies that were already gutted. The 6th SS Panzer Army was burning fuel faster than the supply chain could sustain by the end of the first week, and several thrusts had to be cut short before they reached their objectives. After 1945, the Su-100 stayed in Soviet Army inventory in reserve formations and training roles through the early Cold War. The design was exported to Czechoslovakia and went into domestic production there as the SD-100 during the 1950s. Czechoslovak forces ran the type for decades. The D-10S gun family then fed directly into the D-10T tank gun mounted on the T-54 medium tank series, sharing the 100 by 695 mm R cartridge family that became a Soviet standard for post-war armored vehicles. That one ammunition decision let the Soviet Union transition from wartime self-propelled guns to Cold War main battle tanks without rebuilding the supply chain. The 100 mm gun stayed a cornerstone of Soviet tank armament across multiple generations. Su-100s have surfaced in post-Soviet inventories and in regional conflicts, performing direct fire missions, a service life that started in 1944 and stretched quietly into the 21st century. The crisis that forced the Su-100 into existence was Germany's armour advantage in late 1943. By March 1945, that crisis was effectively closed out, with Soviet combined arms defences, including the Su-100, helping finish off the 6th SS Panzer Army in 10 days of grinding defensive fighting. Built fast, built common, Built to kill the biggest cats in the Wehrmacht inventory, the Su-100 did the job it was designed for, and then quietly did it again for another 50 years. If you want to see how the rest of Stalin's emergency arsenal stacked up against the Wehrmacht when the German armor advantage was at its peak, the next World War II breakdown is on screen now.